Hi guys, I wanted to post a tutorial on the project that we're working on in our science rules unit for 7th grade science. The project is called My Experiment, and it's our doing science at home experiment so that we can practice with the scientific method and try out something cool at home. So I know that some people are going to be working on this over the weekend, and some people have been missing classes for various reasons. And your parents might want to hear the explanation for the experiment from me. So here it is. So I'm going to share my screen and point out some really good resources that I've posted on Canvas that kind of explain our experiment in writing, but also the document that you're going to need to do the experiment. So this is my science class homepage. Whether you are honors or regular science, it's going to look very, very similar to this. And I have a button over here. I have 3 buttons. The first one is class resources, and I've recently updated this. So my class resources is going to be a place where you can find links to all of my Google documents if you should miss a class and you get behind on copying a Google document of notes, or for this lab report, the document that you're going to turn in for this project. So right down here at the very bottom, this is projects. We only have one project so far, and it's My Experiment. The due date is Friday, August 28th. So I'm recording this on Wednesday, August 18th. So this is at the end of next week. This first one is a calendar. So speaking of due dates, I made a table here with the days of the week. We started thinking about our topic last week on Thursday and Friday, and we tried to write the testable question and hypothesis, and some of us are still working on that step. On Monday and Tuesday of this week, we moved on to identifying our variables in our experiment, and we started to write a list of materials and a step-by-step procedure for what we're going to do in our experiment. By today and tomorrow, all of my classes should be ready to start their experiment. Some people have already started their experiment, and some people are going to really need to start it soon so that it's done on time, because your experiment takes a couple of days. If you're growing seeds, you got to get started on that early, because it does not happen overnight. Over the weekend, you have a few extra days to get your experiment done or continue it and take down data. So that's the main part, is collecting the data that you gather while you're doing your experiment and writing it in your data table. And then next week, we're going to analyze what happened in your experiment and write your conclusion. And finally, the whole paper will be done on Thursday and Friday. So let me just go back one page to our class resources. Now, the very bottom link, this is where you'll find the lab report. Now, you only need to make a copy of this document one time. And the vast majority of students have already made a copy of this, but if you are searching your Google Drive and you can't find a document called My Experiment or copy of My Experiment, then you'll need to come here and you'll need to click on this link, and you'll need to make a copy and put it in your Google Drive. So here's how you do that. It's going to drop into the folder called My Drive, and for me that's good enough, as long as you know where it is. Now I would prefer you to put it in your science folder. So if you have a nice organized Google Drive, find your science folder and find the folder called Science Rules, because that's the unit that we're working in. Okay, so here's my document. Now, there's a lot of colors on this document, and I added those colors in order to help you. So let me walk through some things. First, the different steps of the scientific method are kind of chunked into 4 different colors. We have red, we have blue, a lot of blue ones. We have purple, which is just the word data, and then we have green. And so those are kind of the different class days that we're focused on each of these sections. Then you see that we have yellow highlighting and we have blue highlighting. That is my kind of visual cue for you to know that everything that I highlight in yellow, that represents your independent variable, and everything that I've been highlighting in blue, that represents your dependent variable. So basically, it's to help you match these parts of your question and hypothesis to identify your variables correctly. Okay, so I'm going to walk through an example experiment that many students are doing, and I suggested this experiment. It's an easy one. There's not a lot you have to do, but it does take time. So with an ordinary bag of dry beans, so I have a bag of 15 bean soup. It comes with 15 beans and they're dry, so which means they're not cooked and they'll still grow. So beans are just seeds. So if we give them some water, they should start to grow roots. And so that's a fun process to observe. So this experiment would be, how do different beans, so you've got a kidney bean, a pinto bean, I think, and a lima bean. So how do different beans, how does the type of bean affect the rate at which they grow? So for this experiment, my question, I'll share my screen again. My question would be, does changing the type of bean affect the rate of growth? So that is my testable question. And then my hypothesis, well, I'd have to think about my hypothesis, look at my beans maybe, and the lima bean seems to be slightly bigger than the other one. So bigger to me means it's going to grow faster. So my prediction is that if the bean is larger, then it will grow faster. So my independent variable is, it's what's in yellow. So it could be, I could say the type of bean, but then I got more specific in my hypothesis and I said, well, not only is it just the name of the bean, but it's also the size of the bean. So I'm going to put down larger bean. And I'm going to write down that I said lima, and the lima bean is that white bean. So I'm thinking, okay, the type of bean, the larger bean, the lima bean. That's what I'm changing. Okay, I'm going to use these three types of beans. I'm going to test them all and see how they do. My dependent variable is, I'm going to, after several days, I'm going to measure their root. So they're going to sprout a root. That's called germination. It's going to look like this. So I did this for about a week, and this is my results. It is a pretty nice long root. This bean should probably be planted today, or it's not going to last for very much longer. So I will be using a ruler to measure their roots, or their root, because they're going to have one main one. And my control, so what I want to keep the same is I want to keep the amount of water the same, because I know they're going to need water, so I'm going to give them the same amount of water and the amount of sunlight. So I know that plants typically need sunlight, so I'll put them in a sunny spot and I'll leave them all in the same area. All right, so my materials. So I'm going to need a bag of mixed beans, and it has to be a dry bag of beans. I'm going to need some Ziploc bags. I need 3 of those. I'm gonna need some paper towels, because that's how I'm gonna keep them moist. And I'm gonna need a ruler to measure. And, oh, I almost forgot. I'm gonna need water. So when you're making your list of materials, be sure to think and not forget anything. And if you start doing your experiment and you realize you don't have everything that you need, then add it to the materials list. All right, so I would have gathered my plastic bags, I've gathered my beans, I got some paper towels, I got some water, And I actually don't have a ruler right now, but I'm gonna need to have a ruler once they start to grow. So my procedure would be that I'm going to wet a paper towel with water. So I would run this underwater and get it nice and wet. And then I'm going to lay it flat and I'll put 3 lima beans in the middle. And then I'm gonna kind of line up 3 of the same type of beans. Here is in my camera what I'm doing, lining them up in the wet paper towel. And then what I'm gonna do is fold it in half so that they're nice and wet on both sides. Okay, I'm gonna fold the paper towel. And then I'm gonna take my Ziploc bag and put the folded up paper towel with the lima beans in the Ziploc bag and zip it shut. Put the paper towel with beans in the Ziploc bag. And close it. All right. Then I know I have to do that with the kidney beans and the pinto beans, but I don't want to type those steps all out. And scientists hardly ever do that. So what we do instead is we just say, repeat steps. I have to repeat both of those steps with the other 2 beans. So repeat steps 1 and 2 with the other 2 kinds of beans. So in the end, I'll have 3 plastic bags. Each of them will have 3 beans in them, and they will have different types of beans in each. Then I need to wait because seeds don't germinate overnight. So wait at least 3 days. After that, I'm going to check the beans carefully. If you're not careful, you might break the root. Check the beans carefully. And if there is growth, measure the length of the root. And I'm going to put this in all caps, record it in the data table. And now for my 6th step, I'm going to say repeat. I'm going to say repeat step 5. So we're going to check it again. Every day for 5 days. So we'll get a lot of measurements. We'll do 5 days of measurements, and we're doing 3 different types of beans. So that brings us to our data table. So in our data table, we put the independent variable going up and down, and we put the dependent variable going across. So if you think about it, our independent variable is going to be 3 types of beans, and then we add an extra row for the label on top. So I'm going to go up here to Insert, Table, and we're going to do 1, 2, 3. And then, okay, so I have 4 going down, 1 for each bean plus a top row for labeling. And then across, I'm going to have 1 for each day that I measure. So not counting this first row, I need 5 more rows. So I'm going to need 6 columns going across. Now I'm going to click there, and now I'm going to get to labeling. So I always skip this first box because that gives me space to label up here, because I can't put lima beans here and then write in these boxes. So I'm going to put lima beans down here. I'm going to put kidney beans next. And I'm going to put pinto beans here. Now across the top row, I'm going to put each day that I measure it. So day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and day 5. Then when I do my experiment, each day that I measure it, I'm going to write in these boxes. Even if I have to put 0, I can put 0 centimeters. If there's no growth, I can put 0 centimeters. And that's where you're gonna stop until you get your experiment all done. Until you have done the experiment and written down all of your data, you do not do any of the green sections. So that will come once next week after Tuesday, once we have all of your data collected. I hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching.